Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, Tua Tagovailoa. What do they have in common? All first-round quarterbacks. But who are the top 5 QB prospects over the last decade? We'll discuss it next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout over with the Draft Network, as well as your favorite and local running back guru. And I can't talk about anything championship related without Mr. Champion himself, the guy with the actual ring, my guy, Keith Sanchez, Mr. LSU. You can find and follow him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keith, talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst at the Draft Network, man, and 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. But you know why we're here, right? Every single day, every day, right? You tap onto the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast because we are family, man, and we're here to bring you championship level content surrounded to what the NFL draft, like we say, the draft don't stop, right? We're into June, we're heading into July, DP, and we're still dropping this hot draft content with DP. Man, we got some real good cooked up today, man. We're continuing, right? We've been doing, I guess, with a blast from the past, right? A little recap, having conversations about these, positional prospects over the past 10 years. Today, we get to talk about the quarterbacks, DP. This episode probably should have been an hour long, right? Because there's so many intriguing conversations surrounding the quarterbacks. So what we're going to do is we're going to rank our top 5 quarterback prospects over the last 10 years. And this is not revisionist history, right? Like, so we can't go in and say now that everybody loves Justin Herbert or Josh Allen, who is the number 1 quarterback. No, this is when they came out of college. How did you feel about those guys as prospects, from what they did in college? So, DP, man, why don't you kick this thing off? Let's get started.
Oh, man, number 1 for me, Keith, just kind of, going through my top 5. At the top, I have Trevor Lawrence. At number 2, I have Deshaun Watson. Number 3, I have Justin Fields. Number 4, I have Patrick Mahomes at 3, Fields at 4, and Tua Tagovailoa at 5.
Okay, I don't mind it. I'm gonna read mine off and we'll kind of compare them and go back and forth. I went number 1. I went Deshaun Watson number 1. I went Joe Burrow number 2. I went Trevor Lawrence number 3. Then I went the combination of Bryce Young and Justin Fields tied for 4th. And then I put Tua Tagovailoa at 5th. And I rather interesting list, right? Like I'll kind of critique mine because Deshaun Watson, right? And you talk about the wise DP. And I just remember, I think, was it the first play? I think it was definitely the first series of the game. This dude getting helicoptered in the air by Reggie Ragland and somebody else. And then he was almost like, I think that guy died, right? Like you had that type of vibe, and then you just see him get that's how I felt. Like I remember, I know exactly where I was when that play happened, right? It was one of those moments. I knew exactly where I was. And to see him get up off of the turf, right? Like pick himself up. It was one of those old boxing movies. You know what I'm saying? When you're like, man, this is not real. Like he can't sustain that hit and still get up off the canvas. And that's what he did. He got up off the canvas, and then he had guys like Hunter Renfrow to throw the football to, right? Which is a solid player, but you're still going against this vaunted Alabama defense. And he put it all on his shoulders, man. He put it all on his shoulders, and he went out and performed. And I look at Deshaun Watson, DP, from multiple levels, right? I'm like, he's athletic, right? He can throw the football to all levels. He's accurate. He's intelligent. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, when I really think about it, like I think he checks, most, like, or when he came out, he checked most of the boxes for me.
No, and it was a tough battle for him and Trevor Lawrence for that top spot, because I had Trevor at 1, Deshaun at 2. I think the thing that Deshaun only played like 8 games his freshman year, so he didn't get the full season and everything, or the amount of games. Because you look at Trevor Lawrence's freshman year, I believe he played 15. He played majority of the games that year. And I think the thing that was so big for me in determining these two guys, both of them had similar success, right? They both won the national title they both beat Alabama doing it, right? That's the crazy part about it. Both of these quarterbacks beat Nick Saban to win a national title on the biggest stage in college football. Trevor Lawrence came into college football with hype that I don't know if it's been replicated at the quarterback position. You know what I mean? We've tried with the Quinn Ewers and different guys like, no, I don't think there's been hype at quarterback as a recruit coming in like it was with Touchdown Jesus, as they called him in Trevor Lawrence, and he answered the bill. You know what I mean? He took care. Well, no matter how much the bill was, he wrote a check for it. He doubled it, right? And I appreciated that with him, and just watching him play the game. 6'6", 200 plus pounds. He's very mobile, and he's got a really strong arm. He can make all the throws, and he was a dominant player for the Clemson Tigers as well, just like Deshaun.
Yeah, I want to ask you why Trevor? That's what the people want to hear. Why Trevor over Deshaun? Then? Like, what was the last deciding factor?
Man, I looked at, like you talked about, as I just said, they both won a national title versus Nick Saban. If I remember correctly, I think Trevor Lawrence blew Nick Saban out of the arena. I think they just kind of, matter of fact, that was the coming out party of Justin Ross. Like, you know what I mean? I remember that game. I remember where I was when that game happened. I was like, there's no way Bama loses this game. And then next thing you know, it's kind of blowoutish, right? And the level of dominance this young player had versus the wily veteran coach, one of the best of all time. You know what I mean? If you in college football, and heck, if you put in some NFL coaches, like his resume is one of the best of all time. And to walk into that arena, walk into that game and completely dominate the Alabama Crimson Tide, especially back then when their defenses were much better than the recent years of what we've seen from Nick Saban and company. That was the I guess you could say the kiss of death. That was it. That was the chef's kiss for me, where it's like, I got to give it to Trevor, because against a similar opponent, same coaching staff, everything like that, Trevor was dominant. Now, don't get me wrong, Deshaun was a baller too, but Trevor was absolutely dominant versus Alabama.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. So that we split hairs, right? And I had Trevor at 3 just because I went with Joe Burrow, and that was kind of leaning. And we're going to get into this, right, when we had a quarterback discussion with these next 2 segments. But I obviously have seen Joe Burrow 1,000 times in person, right? And
right.
But also just because we when we lean on these quarterback evaluations, right, it is a lot of physical tools. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be the first to tell you that Joe Burrow does not have the strongest arm. And I'll repeat it time and time again. I promise you, it's very underwhelming when you just sit there and watch him throw the football. It just is, right? But everything else he has and checks every box that I was like, I just think he like just from a mental perspective, like that Tom Brady, and you get that comparison a lot. I'm just like, I just think that he was the second best one, of the guys that I watch over the past 10 years. And then, like I said, I followed up Trevor Lawrence at 3, which I think is still very respectable when you're talking about Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow in front of him. And then the round on my list, like I said, I had Tua Tagovailoa, and then I had Bryce Young and Justin Fields tied for 5th place, right? No, I'm sorry. I had Bryce Young and Justin Fields tied for 4th, and Tua Tagovailoa at 5th. But DP, that leads me right until our next segment, right? Because the top 3, right, without a doubt, they've been productive. Or we've seen Trevor not be productive, right? And it was based off of, Urban Meyer to what I think with Doug Peterson is the head coach now with Jacksonville Jaguars. And then we're seeing Justin Fields go through this transition. We've seen Tua Tagovailoa be, you can say, bad for 2 years in Miami, right? And then, he had one good year under Mike McDaniels, although with injury. So we want to get into the scheme over talent situation, right? Like what does that mean? How much does it matter? Or they're really just true transcendent guys? Because DP, I'll tell you this, man. When I went through these quarterback drafted lists, I was just kind of like, I kind of made that face, and it was, you realize that there probably aren't first round quarterbacks every single year. So let's get into this scheme over talent conversation and just really discuss this quarterback group.
Baseball is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. You heard me correct, guys. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. What do you need to do? Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you'll be able to join today. Now, listen. I'm gonna tell you right now, you can bet on your favorite teams. You can bet on the team that's not your favorite if you know that they're a good team. So if you're a Yankees fan, you can bet on the Mets. You can bet on the Yankees if you like. You can bet on the Baltimore Orioles. You can bet on whoever you want in Major League Baseball because FanDuel gives you all of those opportunities. So you don't want to miss a chance to snag a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. You heard me correct, $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. All you have to do again is just go to fanduel.com/locked on to sign up because FanDuel is the official betting partner of Major League Baseball. This discussion reminds me of the chicken versus the egg. Which one came first, right? Like it's been a discussion or a debate as old as time. And that's what scheme over talent. We know a lot of guys come in, Keith. We use the scout to make all the throws, right? Got all the arm talent, all this stuff like that. But then they fall to bad situations. They fall to schemes that don't fit them, and they don't produce the way they did in college. So is scheme more important than the actual talent of the player?
Oh man, so can I add another element to this, DP?
Yeah.
It's scheme, but it's situation, right? Because this the thing, DP, that honestly, when we look at these quarterbacks, right? When I talk about Deshaun Watson, right, he had offensive weapons. When I talk about Joe Burrow, I mean those weapons are clearly stated, and two of the top wide receivers in the entire NFL. That's crazy, right? He had both of them on his team, and then you go to Trevor Lawrence, he had weapons, right? So can I go to Tua Tagovailoa? You're talking about Henry Ruggs, you're talking about Jalen Waddle, you're talking about what he had Jameson Williams for?
No,
he had it was
Jalen
he
Waddle,
had
Ruggs, Judy, and Smitty.
Yeah, there we go. I knew it was the four. Yeah, so he had those four, right? You talk about Bryce Young, he had 3, 4, 5 guys. Justin Fields had dudes, right? So, and we're talking about like high caliber NFL guys. So, can I add in the element of not just scheme over talent, but the talent that's in that scheme too? You know what I'm saying? Like where you're going to. I think that also matters for quarterbacks being in a good situation. And you look at some of the failures, right? As far as some of these quarterbacks, and you can look back at that situation and be like, man, that was just a bad spot, period. Like there was a lot of bad around it. Like we're on the upswing with Trevor Lawrence, right? But we've seen some pretty bad football from him under the Urban Meyer regime. And then remember last year, right? Last offseason, what did they do, DP? They attacked the hell out of the offensive skill position, right? Brought in Christian Kirk when everybody was like, why the hell are y'all paying him $60 million, right? Then Evan Ingram, right? They went and I think they traded a sign for Evan Ingram. They brought in one other wide receiver, I believe. I thought they brought in 2 wide receivers and a tight end. Then you went and trade, and they're still doubling down, right? They're like, okay, Calvin really got suspended for betting. Watch this. Hey, come play for us. You know what I'm saying? So now we're talking about them having potentially one of the best skill positions, not only in addition, DP, the running game, right? Like drafting Travis Etienne, and then who's the other running back that they just drafted?
Tank Bigsby.
Tank Bigsby, right? So they're going to have the running backs, they're going to have the wide receivers, they have the tight end. So they're doubling down on this idea of let's get our superstar quarterback some really good weapons, and that's where I kind of want to live more than anything. Because like I said, we can go down the list, and I'll let you take over here. I'll go down the list and be like, remember, that was a bad situation. You know what I'm saying? And go from there.
No, Keith, you make so many great points because at the end of the day, as we talked about when we talked to like Isaiah Simmons, right? When we had that discussion about him on one of the recent podcasts, you draft with a plan and you know what you want to do for a player, and you put your scheme, you tailor your scheme to your player, especially at the quarterback position. Because at the end of the day, everything you said is true. This not just the scheme, but the talent within the scheme, the receivers, the tight ends, the offensive line, all that stuff plays a part, right? Because let's be honest, there are not many scheme transcendent players that come in and out of the draft year after year. I would say 85% of the prospects have a scheme that they fit best in, right?
Yeah,
you don't have a ton of guys that be like, okay, this quarterback can play West Coast. This quarterback can play in Bruce areas, no risk it, no biscuit, right? And the vertical passing offense, shot plays, things like that. This quarterback can just be a game manager. No, everybody is not cut out to be to play the same thing.
No, DP, and I want to read off one draft class to you, and we have to dive into this, right, from the perspective of we know, like when we get these quarterbacks, DP, that like we're kind of all in on the quarterbacks, and they get the hype, and they that like they have the NFL draft videos, right, and we're thinking, oh, this is the next superstar, right? But when you really get down to this and you start comparing draft class, like listen to this 2016 draft class. You had Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Paxton Lynch, Christian Hackenberg, Jacoby Brissett, and Cody Kessler. Where do they compare in the, you know what I'm saying, like in the larger portions of things? But best believe, DP, in that draft cycle, those were the guys that were hyped up the most, right? Like one team drafted X quarterback thinking like, hey, this is going to be the next Peyton Manning, or, you know, I get comparisons of, you know, Tom Brady, or I see, you know, another Pro Bowl quarterback with this guy, when in all actuality, when you really look at those guys' careers, they didn't add up to a Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson or Joe Burrow or Tua Tagovailoa or, you know, a Bryce Young in the most recent draft, as far as even what they showed on tape as far as their college career. So I think that was a very interesting, when I was going through it, DP, that was the part that kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, man, that wasn't that good of a draft class, but we spent a lot of time talking about those guys.
Bro. And to piggyback off of that, Keith, I got two classes back to back that gave me the same feeling. 2014, Blake Bortles, 3rd overall. Johnny Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater. Then you got Derek Carr, Derek Carr and Jimmy G were the two best out of that group, right? You know what I mean? Blake Bortles had that one run, but that was more defense and run game.
Yeah, and they were the best. Derek Carr was the best quarterback in that year on film, right? Like Blake Bortles, right. I think when he was at UCF. And then Teddy Bridgewater, like that was not, he was not drafted that high because everybody thought he had extreme amount of arm talent. He was about to sling it all around, right? Like they dove more into the intangibles. Because I don't know if you remember, I think they played in the Super Bowl that year. I think that game happened in the Superdome when they played Florida. I don't know if you remember that. And then remember he got hit under the chin and his chin was all bloody and stuff. And then that was like, oh man, Teddy Bridgewater is tough. Okay, I get it. I like Teddy. Teddy Two Gloves, right? He's tough. That's fine. But the question is this: can he sling the heat rock? Like that's the conversation that you have to have. Can he sling the heat rock? I get it. You're tough, right? Tim Tebow was tough. You know what I'm saying? And you have respect for those guys playing the game at that level. But the question is this high caliber quarterback, or are you drafting more of a leadership guy, which is essentially your backup quarterback?
Correct. 2013, EJ Manuel, 1st round, right? You know, you got Geno Smith, Mike Glennon, Matt Barkley, Ryan Nassib, Landry. Like, bro, we've had some really rough QB classes in this last 10-year span. Don't get into it. We've had some good ones in terms of the skill set of process. But, Keith, we've had some bad ones. I want to ask this before we transition for you. You were there at LSU, right? And we remember with Joe Burrow, he transferred from the first year, he transferred from Ohio State to LSU. He didn't have a great breakout season, right? Because that was that still, I think that might have been when they were still running that 48 old school 48 toss pitch type run game and all the stuff like that they were running. And then Joe Brady comes in. And the scheme is like, okay, let's open this bad boy up a little bit and let's suit our point guard essentially. Because that's what I remember talking to some scouts that scouted him after the first year with LSU, and they was like, yeah, like 4th, 5th, you know what I mean? And I was like, okay, that I can see that. And he was like, nah, if he goes up there and performs, you know, we'll see. But it's like right now, off of this 1 year we have off of LSU, 4th, 5th round, and then you know that last year. The undefeated season. Said Joe Brady walks in, you got Jamar Chase, you got all these weapons, Keith. What you being there, what was that like? Because that seemed like that when you changed the scheme, we saw the real Joe Burrow.
Yeah, it was we cooking now. That's how we felt, right? Because listen, before everybody's seen it, right? You have to think we go through spring ball, right? We go through winter workouts. So we start seeing the skeleton bases of it, right? And we're talking about LSU. We're talking about a school that traditionally, like you said, our formation is our formation. Power, that is our thing. Toss, dive, that's our play, right? And you know it's coming and we still gonna run it, right? That's what we do. But DP, when we walked into the indoor facility one time, right? And doing winter workouts and stuff like that. And we see Joe Burrow in the shotgun. And we see a wide receiver go in motion, and we got 11 personnel out on the field. We say, oh, baby, what is this, right? Like, that's the feeling you had. Like, this is exciting, man. Then I remember going through spring camp, and I remember watching Joe Brady, right? Like, we're sitting on the sideline, boom, charting stuff. And I remember watching Joe Brady, right? And he knew exactly what this was supposed to look like, right? And then you see that in his mind, DP, he starts saying, oh, hold on. Justin Jefferson pretty damn good, right? And he said, hold on, Jamar Chase is a baller. And so he's sitting there saying, hey, we have these guys, and he's like, you understand that we have something there. And that was the biggest part, DP. So you asked me, like, what was the moment? That was the moment, is that we're seeing the skeleton things. And yes, it was a progression, DP, because, I think the first game we played, Utah State or Georgia Southern. I may be getting, I can't remember exactly which one it was, but then going to Texas, yes, that was a big deal, right? But then you see that, okay, like all of this coming together, it was the perfect combination, right? Joe Burrow being the type of quarterback that he was, so smart. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase being the type of wide receivers that they are. And not only that, they're complementary of each other, right? Because if both of them did the same exact thing, then you're like, okay, I don't know how this fits, right? If you just had two speed demons, you still need somebody that can run routes. So those guys were complementary of each other. Then you throw in Terrace Marshall, who I'm expecting to do big things for the Carolina Panthers. So Panthers fans, look out for T. Marsh this year. So I think it was exactly that, DP. Like it was a combination of everything put together, and it was special to be able to watch and actually see in person with DP. Man, we're talking about the evolution of the LSU offense. We about to get into the evolution of the quarterback position, because it seems like we were going away from everybody want a pocket passer to now we want to know if you can run. Like that's what I remember. It was like, stay in the pocket. I don't want you to run. That guy runs too much. To now it's, can you run? So DP, I really want to get into this conversation of the evolution of the quarterback, position over the last couple of years and what to expect moving forward.
Time has changed and things have changed, Keith, and guys, the evolution of the quarterback has absolutely taken a turn. Like you said, Keith, to as you teased this segment, we went from wanting the next Tom Brady, the next Peyton Manning. Those guys are going to stand tall in the pocket and just deliver pinpoint accurate passes to, can you get me out of trouble? Can you create second window opportunities for your receivers? Can you create a scramble drill, keep your eyes downfield, and make a play with your legs outside of the pocket and still throw the ball 60 yards on the field? The tools, truthfully, the tools have taken over. And I don't mind it, Key, because I've evolved in terms of what I prefer, from a quarterback. I look at Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Peyton Manning. I look at them as aliens now. They're not common anymore because of what has happened. Those guys were so smart, Keith, like so smart, but also they were given time. If you remember, Peyton Manning threw, I think, 23 interceptions or 25 his third year in the league. Think about a quarterback doing that now, Keith, in year 3 of a rookie deal. He goes out, he throws almost 25 interceptions. Oh, yeah, social media won't let you forget that. Yeah, the fans might stop buying tickets because they want that man up out of there. So the game has changed to where you're looking for Josh Allen. You're looking for Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, so we talking about the game changer from a mobility perspective. And I say there's a period, there's an era of the lost decade of there's lost quarterbacks, right? That potentially we could have squeezed something out of guys like Pat White with West Virginia, right? Dennis Dixon. I think Marcus Mariota came a couple years too early. Troy Smith, Vince Young, right? Like some of these guys were just too early for the time, and that's to no fault of their own, because what happened was this, and that's what I want our listeners, because I told, and I think I've had this conversation with you, DP, and I'm gonna wrap up with this. When we talk about, okay, the evolution of the quarterback position, but also what is a pro style offense, right? Because that's the biggest thing. Pro style offense, what is it? It's simply the offense that the people in the NFL know how to run, right? It's like speaking a language, right? That, like, can you speak English, French? Like what do you speak, right? And so what happened was you had these highly talented guys, but the NFL and those offensive coordinators were saying, I can't coach him, right? But what they spent it was, instead of saying that it's on me, I can't coach him, I don't like the offense that I learned how to run doesn't fit his skill set. They try to put it on the player, right? And say that, oh, well, he's not good enough, or the mental intellect. It's like, no, you just don't know how to use that skill set, but they've done it for such a long time of spinning it. And then we look at those guys of, man, they just can't grasp this, right? Or they just don't fit in the NFL. They're not for the NFL. It's like, no, the NFL wasn't for them either, right? Like they didn't decide. There's no DP. There's no, like, I'm trying to think of the word, right? Like that's not just pure circumstance that, you have the same guy that coached Colin Kaepernick, right? When the 49ers made their run to the Super Bowl, he doubled down and coached Lamar Jackson. That's because he knows how to handle mobile quarterbacks. Now, eventually, he got slid up out of there because the passing game needs to evolve, but that's what he specialized in, right? And then you can go to Jalen Hurts, right? Okay, Jalen Hurts, right? And then now the OC with Jalen Hurts goes to want to coach Anthony Richardson because he knows what to do with that. So I really want to break that down for our listeners, because we sit there and you're like, man, these guys were so dominant in college, and then they go to the NFL and we're relegated to saying that they're nothing. And it's because the NFL was just a different style. And then it was more so about what the coaches can coach versus the players not being able to pick anything up, or them just getting to the NFL and their skill set is just gone.
No, 100%, Keith. And I'll close it. Close my point with this. I remember a scout telling me, he's like, college football is like 3 to 5 years behind high school, and the NFL is like 3 to 5 years behind college, but 5 to 7 years behind high school in terms of offensive development and play calling. He's like, man, you turn on some of these high school tapes and you start seeing all type of play calls. He's like, you start seeing all type of spacing. And of course, you being in college football the years you in, you probably saw a lot of that yourself when you watching some of these receivers and quarterbacks. Like, bro, what kind of scheme are there? What is this offense that they're running? Because it puts so much stress on the defense while the player is a 5-star, it's like, man, well, you got kind of, this offense helps you out a lot. So it's like you see a lot of the creativity in high school leak into college, but it takes a little while before it starts to leak into the NFL. And to your point, that narrative was always built where it's like, yeah, these guys can't play at a high level. They don't have the intellect, where it's like, no, you just don't know how to pivot. That's the biggest thing for me, is that these NFL coaches, I always talk about, don't put a round peg in a square hole. If you got yourself, if you want to run that New England style offense, right, that quick, West Coast type of offense, then why are you trying to draft a Cam Newton or Anthony Richardson and run an offense that doesn't fit their skill set? And then you still run that. And then we look at the quarterback and be like, man, he just couldn't cut it. No, that's not what he fits. That's not where he excels. If he's a vertical passer, why are you telling him to read option routes? Like that, if that's not his game, you're going to have to coach him up to that. So at the end of the day, I think, like you said, man, the coaches, the NFL in general, they have to own this thing. And that's the evolution of the game. The quarterbacks have turned into machines. And these coaches are kind of happy about it, but at the same time, it still puts pressure on them to do what's best for these players. At the end of the day, we see what happened when you give Josh Allen a number 1 wide receiver. He takes a step. You see what happened when you give Jalen Hurts and his tools, essentially two number 1 wide receivers, you get to the Super Bowl, baby. You know what I mean? So when you have these type of players and athletes at the QB position, if you do your job, put the right skill positions around them, as well as build the right offense, you're going to have success. Now you put it on the quarterback to go out there and succeed. But man, guys, this has been a fun discussion about quarterbacks in general, the top 5 prospects, going over scheme over talent, and of course, the evolution of the position, man. So we appreciate y'all for tapping in. Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it's available. As we always tell you, we appreciate y'all for being our family and our every single day. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day, Monday through Friday. In terms of Twitter, you can find and follow Keith Sanchez at The Talent Code. You can find and follow me, Damian Parson, at DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation tomorrow. We're going to get into some offensive line. We're going to look at some of these tackles that have come through and these offensive tackles and talk about these big boys because they deserve love too. We need them balls on the end of our offensive lines. But again, come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.